Every great story has a moment where everything hangs by a thread. For this one, it was 4 words. In a high-rise boardroom, 42 stories above the city, the pen was ready. The contract lay on polished wood. Cameras were already waiting outside to capture a signature worth $2.5 billion. Executives leaned forward, their smiles fixed, their bonuses all but cashed. And then it happened. A voice broke through the silence. It wasn't a shareholder, it wasn't an attorney, it wasn't one of the men who had built careers trading lives for margins. It was a gardener, a black single mother, with dirt still beneath her fingernails and calluses pressed deep into her palms. A woman who spent her mornings pruning hedges and her evenings checking her daughter's glucose monitor. Her 4 words silenced the room. Don't sign the deal. In that instant, the atmosphere fractured. Security shifted. Eyebrows rose. The pen stopped, suspended in the CEO's hand. And for the first time in years, power hesitated. Because while the press outside saw progress, flashing cameras, polished speeches, the promise of jobs and innovation, she saw something different. She saw what no one else dared to name. The cost. The layoffs hidden in a spreadsheet cell. The lives slashed out by a red line. The families who would never be invited into that tower, but would feel its decisions ripple through their kitchens, their mortgages, their hospital bills. The city was about to trade people for profit. And one mother, with nothing left to lose, was about to stand in the way. This wasn't a headline yet. Not a scandal. Not a story to be dissected on the evening news. This was a single human voice in the wrong room at the wrong time. And yet, by the time the sun set, those 4 words would unravel alliances, topple careers, and force a CEO to make a choice that would haunt her forever. Because this wasn't about finance. It wasn't about strategy. It wasn't about modernization or efficiency or shareholder value. This was about people. It was about a mother, a daughter, and a decision that could not be taken back once the ink touched paper. Stay with me, because what happened next didn't just challenge one corporation. It challenged the very idea of who gets to be heard and who gets written out. The CEO's next move didn't just stun Wall Street. It rewrote the rules for every working family watching. And before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Tonight, we follow a story that doesn't begin in a boardroom, but in a garden. A story of a black single mother who keeps a city's parks alive, a $2.5 billion promise with a hidden price, and a CEO whose decision would make enemies on every floor of her empire. This is not just about money. This is about power. This is about survival. And this is about the one choice that could never be undone. Her name is Maya Brooks, 38 years old, a gardener, a single mom, and a quiet force in her neighborhood. Most people never saw her work. They only saw the result. Parks trimmed, flowers blooming, walkways clean. But those who knew her understood. She carried more than she ever let on. Her daughter, just 9, depended on her for everything. From homework help to late-night glucose checks when her blood sugar spiked. Maya's life was measured not in profit margins, but in hospital bills, grocery lists, and the hours of daylight she could squeeze out to make ends meet. And yet, she would be the one to stop a billion-dollar deal in its tracks. Across the city, another woman was fighting a different battle. Evelyn Park, 42 years old, CEO of Park and Holt Infrastructure. She was polished, sharp, and relentless. The youngest woman to ever lead her company. Every deal she signed was another jewel in her crown, and another shadow of her father's empire she managed to outrun. For Evelyn, the $2.5 billion Techline acquisition was legacy. Proof that she could transform an aging company into a powerhouse of the future. She carried the expectations of shareholders, the watchful eyes of the press, and the weight of a board eager to cash in. But what Evelyn did not know, what she could not know, was that her toughest challenger wasn't sitting across from her in another skyscraper. It was standing in the dirt of a public garden. Standing just behind Evelyn, always close enough to whisper, was Rylan Voss. In his 50s, chief financial officer. Suave, silver-haired, known for making the numbers work, by any means. His bonus was tied to the deal. His reputation, his influence, his seat at the table, all riding on Evelyn's signature. And the documents in his briefcase told only one story: sign now, profit later. But numbers can lie, and some lies carry a body count. And then there were the ones no one invited into the boardroom. The cafeteria teams who served the meals. The custodians who cleaned the marble floors. The security guards at the doors. The gardeners, like Maya, who made the city breathe. To the board, they were costs. To their families, they were everything. And buried deep inside the contract were the words that would erase them. Outsourcing, terminations, reductions. 4 lives now collide. The mother who spoke when no one else would. The CEO who had everything to lose. The CFO who would do anything to win. And the thousands of unseen workers whose futures hung on the stroke of a pen. So who is Maya Brooks, really? Why risk everything for a fight she could never win? And what choice did Evelyn Park make? A choice so shocking it silenced even her own board. This is the story of how a gardener stopped a $2.5 billion deal, and what came after no one saw coming. Maya Brooks began her mornings not with contracts or conference calls, but with the rituals of survival. A pot of oatmeal stretched to last the week. Lunches packed with care. A glucose monitor that needed checking before Amara ever left the house. For Maya, numbers didn't mean profit margins. They meant blood sugar levels. They meant whether her daughter would make it through the school day without a trip to the emergency room. By mid-morning, Maya's world was dirt and roots. She wasn't just a gardener. She was a teacher, a mentor, a quiet anchor for neighbors who found dignity in growing something of their own. The city called it a job. The community called it hope. But no amount of blossoms could disguise the storm that was moving closer. Across town, Evelyn Park lived in another reality. The youngest CEO her company had ever appointed. Her father's empire behind her, her own legacy ahead. She had mastered the language of power, investor calls, projections, media soundbites that promised the future while burying the costs. To the press, she was vision incarnate. To her board, she was profit embodied. To herself, she was one bad quarter away from irrelevance. Behind the numbers was Ryland Voss, the CFO, silver-tongued, silver-haired. His talent wasn't in math, but in making the math say what he wanted. Efficiencies, streamlining, non-core services, words that sounded harmless in a boardroom, but meant devastation in break rooms. Every bonus Ryland earned was tied to signatures like the one Evelyn was about to make. He had millions riding on her pen, and he had no intention of losing. Out in the open, nothing had changed. But in the shadows, whispers were spreading. Contracts up for renewal. Rumors of cuts. No one dared say it too loud, but everyone felt it. Something was coming. Maya wasn't looking for a fight. But sometimes, the fight finds you. Late one evening, a friend in facilities showed her something he was never meant to share. It was all there. The words that could erase thousands of jobs with the click of a pen. Custodians. Gardeners. Kitchen staff. People whose names she knew, whose families she'd seen at school events, whose children played beside her daughter in the park. And at the bottom of that list, her own code, her job, her health insurance, her daughter's lifeline. Maya wasn't supposed to see that spreadsheet. But once she did, she couldn't unsee what it meant. Not just for her, not just for her daughter, but for thousands of families, all waiting for a decision they didn't even know was coming. City Hall was supposed to be the place where every voice mattered. But on that morning, the voices allowed belonged to one side only. The side with money on the table and power in their pockets. Maya's hand was raised, but the moment was already over. The microphone cut. The next witness called. For her, the message was unmistakable. This decision was made long before the hearing began. In the quiet belly of the garage, the two women crossed paths. One carried a billion-dollar empire. The other, a folder that spelled the collapse of that empire. For a fleeting moment, they were simply two mothers standing in the same silence. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even defiance. It was a test. Evelyn's words floated heavy in the air, but what Maya carried was heavier still. Back upstairs, Ryland Voss was rehearsing control. His golden rule: if you own the narrative, You own the truth. His job was to make complexity sound clean, cuts sound efficient, and silence sound like consensus. But even he knew, numbers don't bleed. People do. If Maya's voice was shut out of City Hall, she would speak where her voice carried weight, in the garden. She organized a vigil, green ribbons for life, candles for families. It was small, it was fragile, but it was visible, and visibility is dangerous to those who prefer silence. What had started as whispers in union halls was now on the evening news. And once a story finds light, it can't be put back in the dark. Then came the message. Anonymous. Untraceable. 3 words that would light the fuse. Check Appendix G. What she saw confirmed her worst fears. The deal wasn't about progress. It was about profit. Profit built on lies. The company they were buying was hollow, its assets inflated, its value propped up by kickbacks. And the only ones guaranteed to benefit were the men at the top. Appendix G wasn't just a footnote. It was a fuse. And once lit, there was no going back. What would you do if your job and your child's health depended on stopping a signature? If you're still with us, drop active in the comments or share your current state. Let's see who's writing this story out in real time. The deal wasn't just a business headline anymore. It was a battlefield of narratives. For every article promising progress, another warned of pink slips. For every anchor praising efficiency, another showed families in fear. And at the center of it all, Maya Brooks, a gardener who had seen the numbers the board wanted hidden. Maya needed someone who could read between the numbers. Harold Pierce had spent 4 decades auditing city contracts. He knew the tricks. Inflated valuations, shell subsidiaries, success fees that rewarded failure as long as the deal closed. Here, this company doesn't even exist outside paper. Here, assets counted twice. And this line, they don't get paid if the deal falls apart. So of course they'll say it's strong. Maya, this isn't modernization. This is a hollow shell. Harold said. Then why isn't anyone stopping it? Maya asked tightly. Harold replied. Because no one wants to. They all profit if it goes through. Everyone else is expendable. If the numbers were real, why bury Appendix G so deep? And why leave it to a gardener to stumble onto the truth? While Maya searched for truth, Evelyn Park wrestled with pressure. Shareholders wanted speed. The mayor's office demanded headlines. Ratings agencies whispered about consequences. And beside her, Rylan Voss, smooth, relentless, urged her hand toward the pen. Every day you delay, confidence erodes. Don't overthink this. Just sign. Ryan said. Why would an independent consultancy ignore evidence so obvious? Unless their paycheck depended on not seeing it. Then came the leak. A memo, conveniently timed, suggesting the union had already folded. Anger swept through break rooms and kitchens. Trust collapsed. For workers already afraid, this was the final blow. This wasn't written by your union. Someone forged it. Someone wants you fractured before you can fight. Harold added. If the union didn't fold, then who planted the memo? And why target Maya's trust just as the deal came within reach? The company moved to silence leaks. Maya's friend, the one who handed her the roster, was dragged into what they called an internal interview. It looked procedural. It felt like intimidation. Where did you get the file? The compliance officer asked. It was left in recycling, the friend replied. Be smart. Cooperation ends this clean. Defiance makes it worse, the officer added. The threat was clear. Speak, and you'll be crushed. Stay silent, and maybe you survive. To drown out doubt, Ryland staged his own theater. A polished consultancy, handpicked and well-paid, stamped the deal clean. The message, nothing to see, no flaws, no delays. This acquisition secures our future. The numbers are undeniable. Don't let baseless fear derail progress. Ryan declared. But fear wasn't the issue. Truth was. Why would Rylan lean so hard on reviews no one could question? Unless he knew exactly what those reviews were hiding. For Maya, this wasn't politics. It was life. Her daughter's health balanced on every paycheck, every insurance claim, every pill bottle. The cost of silence was not theoretical. It was lying in a hospital bed, fragile, depending on her mother to fight. And in that moment, Maya made her choice. No more whispers. No more waiting. Whatever it cost, she would not let her daughter's future be signed away. At 9 a.m., the pens would come out. And once ink hit paper, there would be no undoing it. The question was no longer whether the deal would happen, but whether anyone was willing to stop it. The shareholder preview was never meant for the public. It was a final checkpoint before the celebration, a controlled performance where questions were rehearsed and answers already written. But on this morning, the script was about to unravel. Maya Brooks asked for 60 seconds. Just 1 minute. Counsel warned Evelyn to shut it down. But for reasons even she couldn't yet explain, Evelyn agreed. You have 60 seconds. No more, Evelyn said. And with that, a gardener took the floor of $1 billion room. They're buying a shell. Assets that look full, but are counted twice. Savings that don't come from innovation, but from outsourcing jobs, cutting contracts, and terminating workers. Consultants who are paid more if the deal closes, not if the deal succeeds. This isn't progress. It's profit for the few and devastation for the many. Maya revealed. Maya didn't use jargon. She used clarity. Every number stripped bare. Every consequence tied to a face, a family, a life. And for the first time, silence swept across the shareholder room. Ladies and gentlemen, let's not indulge conspiracy theories. These are the paranoid ramblings of someone with no financial background, no authority, and frankly, no understanding of complex mergers. The independent review is clear. This is noise. Nothing more. Ryan counters. He called it noise. Conspiracy. Desperation. And for a moment, the room leaned his way. After all, he was the expert. She was just a gardener. The contract was on the table. The cameras were in the hall. The clock read 8:59. You claim to have proof. Show me, Evelyn demanded. Maya's 60 seconds were up. But in her hand, she carried something far heavier than words. A flash drive that could change everything. She scrolled through emails that shouldn't have existed. Proof of pre-agreed layoffs. Proof of consultants tied to kickbacks. And proof that the deal was never about progress. Only profit. In that moment, Evelyn Park, CEO, leader, daughter of an empire, was forced to see the truth. Not in whispers. Not in rumors. In writing. In black and white. It was no longer about contracts. No longer about charts. It was one woman facing another, truth burning between them, while a room full of men waited to see who would blink first. But there was nothing but silence. Just the faint hum of the projector fan. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her silence was an answer of its own. The contract was ready. The shareholders, restless. The board demanding action. But in that silence, Evelyn Park faced the decision of her career. Protect her empire or protect the truth. What she did next would stun her board, her city, and even herself. She had only to sign. 30 seconds, and the deal would be done. Every shareholder would clap. Every headline would praise. Every worker would pay. And then she didn't sign. This contract is suspended. Effective immediately, the independent consultancy is terminated. A forensic review will be conducted by a third-party firm. And until then, this deal is dead on arrival. Evelyn declared. Suspended. Fired. Investigated. With those words, Evelyn detonated the room. Effective immediately, Rylan Voss is suspended pending investigation. She added, Rylan's empire cracked in real time. The man who had orchestrated the numbers now found himself erased from them. The empire she'd fought to lead turned on her instantly. Some threatened a vote to strip her power. Others whispered lawsuits. Every ally she thought she had revealed themselves as something else. The translation of this could only mean one thing. Watch your back. If a deal needs darkness, it won't happen on my watch. Evelyn said. The clip went viral in hours. 14 words that shattered the company's illusion of progress. For some, she was a hero. For others, a traitor. But for everyone, she was unforgettable. The forensic review did what whispers could not. Prove the kickbacks, the inflated numbers, the corruption. Evidence flowed into prosecutors' hands. Careers ended. Cases opened. And the savings once meant for bonuses were redirected into a new plan. grow local. Instead of outsourcing, the money seeded apprenticeships in parks, maintenance, and green infrastructure. It wasn't just numbers anymore. It was growth, alive in the city's soil. Evelyn offers Maya a contract, community advisory council, full-time, paid position. Maya looks at it, then looks at her daughter in the park, laughing with friends. She shakes her head softly and says, "Thank you, but my place is here. I'll advise, but the garden is where I belong." Maya declined the office. She chose her soil. She chose her daughter. But she agreed to advise monthly, her voice forever woven into the city's decisions. "Nothing grows in the dark," Evelyn said to her. And with a half-smile, Maya replied, "Then we'll keep the lights on." Power isn't only who signs. It's who refuses to sign for the wrong reasons, and who dares to show them why. But here's the part almost nobody saw coming. The report named one more insider, and their identity will change everything you thought you knew. What's your take on this? Did Evelyn do the right thing, or should she have signed? Comment below. I'm reading every single one of them. If this story struck you, share it with someone who still believes one voice can make a difference. And if you want more twists like this, check out the video on your screen. It will change the way you see power. One woman with nothing but a folder of papers changed the course of $1 billion deal. One CEO found the courage to pause, even when every voice around her screamed to sign. And one child reminded them both what was really at stake. Now the questions are yours. Was justice really served, or was this just a different kind of compromise? Should Evelyn have walked away completely, even at the cost of her career? And if you were in Maya's position, would you have spoken up, knowing what it could cost your family? What do you think happened behind those closed doors? Courage, strategy, or both? I want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts below. Your thought matters to us. We read every one of them. And if you made it this far, let me know where you're watching from. This channel isn't just about stories. It's about community. And if you want more stories like this, don't miss what's coming next. If this resonated with you, hit like and share it with someone who still believes one person can make a difference. And if you want to stay with us for the next chapter, make sure you subscribe, because the fight for truth is far from over.